Hello. Today we ask Reddit what's your true, unexplained story of being in a place that shouldn't exist. Make sure to comment any scary occurrences down below. I have included mine there. With that, sit back and enjoy. Many years ago, my family and I moved from California to Nebraska. I was still a young kid, probably 5-6 years old. We were driving through Nevada and shortly after Las Vegas, and we needed to stop and fuel up. We stopped at your typical old-school gas station that rings when you pull up to the pump. I don't remember it that well, but my dad told me it looked normal. He got out to stretch while my mom went inside to pay for gas. My mom said that when she walked in, the gas station had quite a few people inside, despite us being the only car there. When she walked up to the counter to pay for gas, everyone turned to her and the lights went out. She ran outside where my dad witnessed everything and helped her into the car, and we sped off down the interstate, not caring whether we ran out of gas or not. To this day, my mom says that's one of her scariest encounters because she can't explain nor figure out exactly what was going on. And yes, we found a better gas station down the road and made it to Nebraska. The townspeople probably remember your family and still ponder what the duck that was all about. They were probably just as freaked out. Some lady walks in, and when everyone turns to look at her, the lights go out. A couple years ago, a buddy and I got turned around on a side road in rural North Missouri. I had no service for GPS and it was pouring rain, so I headed south toward my destination, hoping to run into a main highway. We ended up coming into the town of Skidmore, Mo. It's a tiny town in the middle of nothing, but there's something dark about that place. Infamously, in the 80s, a man known as the town bully was killed in broad daylight in the middle of town there. Not one person spoke up about who killed him, and it's never been solved despite many witnesses. There's also been disappearances, and a brutal crime a few years ago involving a baby being cut out of a woman's womb. Keep in mind, this is a town of only 270 people. As we drove down the main drag, several people gave us a blank but intimidating stare, completely unnerving. Once we got out of the town, my buddy mentioned he'd had a sense of impending doom or danger as we drove through. Weirdly enough, I'd been feeling the same way. I'd never had such a persistent gut feeling of danger like that before. We agreed to never ever go through Skidmore again. There's something seriously evil about that town. It shouldn't exist. I heard about Skidmore on another Reddit thread, so Googled it, and damn, that town is ducked up. So many murders and disappearances for such a tiny place. I grew up in Middle Missouri. The people who live way out in the sticks have their own way of doing things. They don't trust outsiders much and handle problems themselves. A dude rapes a girl? He'll probably end up disappearing and nobody knows anything about it. Man cheats on his wife? He suddenly has a bad accident on some stairs. There are more than a few bodies buried up in the hills, man. I have a couple, but I will choose just this one. Driving in rural areas in New England, near the borders of Vermont and Massachusetts, so I am not sure which one I was in. It was late. Well, okay, so late it was actually early. And there was fog, dense fog. Like Silent Hill levels of fog. And like an idiot who dies in the opening scene of a horror movie, I am driving on back roads. First, my headlight goes out, and I cannot use my high beams because of the fog. I am in the middle of nowhere, and I haven't seen a house or town in a long time. The car starts making noise, and the check engine light comes on. So I pull over. Nothing much is around besides fields, fog, and the dark. Creepy as hell. I gamely look at the engine. I can fix electronics, not engines. I tighten all the things I know. Car now won't start. So I am in the dark, in the middle of nowhere, on the side of the road. Because of the natural rules of how things work, my cell phone has no service as well. It is like one big cliché. But I am not stupid enough to go wandering the roads right now. So I recline my seat and decide to take a nap for a couple hours until the sun comes up. I wake up, the sun is coming up, the fog is going away. And I am in on the main street of a tiny town, parked in front of what looks like the Bates Motel house. Houses everywhere. It was the creepiest feeling. I was sure off in the woods. There was not a light on in any house all night. There was a service station 50 yards up the road. I walked up to it, talked to the guy, who looked perfectly normal. He walked over to look at the car, asked me to try to start it. And it did. Ducking thing turned over right away. And both headlights were working. I drove on, never got the name of the little village, and I couldn't find it on a map. I always felt like I was in this big setup for a horror movie that just didn't pan out. Not just one, but there's a whole lot of places in rural New Zealand that will scare the shit out of someone who isn't used to it. Hell, even some of my Kiwi friends would sometimes be like, "Duck, no, I'm not hiking out there with you guys, good luck." If I had to choose one, we were doing a 5-day hike, had pretty good maps and directions. Now there's a lot of nationally funded huts throughout the island, very well marked. We found this one random hut that was definitely not on the maps, with a bunch of older guys just hammered partying inside. And this was way out of where these guys could have just walked up from town to party in for the afternoon. No gear whatsoever, just the craziest looking 60+ guys hammered in this random unmarked cabin. When we came back by later, the place was absolutely empty and musty, so they packed up their trash and stuff, but it still seemed all gross and dirty. We were all kind of baffled. Did we actually meet all these crazy hillbilly old men partying in the middle of nowhere? They obviously weren't going up there to clean it up, and where the hell did this cabin even come from just in the middle of these mountains? And how did they just randomly hike up there with cases of beer and booze and speakers? I was relocating across Texas and, as I normally do, was driving through the night to skip traffic, and because it's more serene that way. I was driving straight through central Texas going northwest, so seeing the hill country change to desert in the full moon was super cool. Anyways, I was driving with my, now ex-wife, and we were running low on gas. Luckily, we were pulling into a tiny no-name town and we could see an old gas station come around the bend. This encounter happened at about 2 a.m. Now, this town only has one road, and this station was right at the edge of town at the end of it. When I say old, I mean very old, the type that you have no option of prepaying. You simply flip up the handle on the machine and you hear the pump inside start struggling to get the gas from the reservoir. It had the old-style tick readers too, not a thing electrical on it. I, being the young man I was, had never seen one before, so I walked into the store to buy the gas before I pumped. The store only had one light in the far back on, and I almost thought it was closed since it was barely brighter inside than it was out in the moonlight. Upon entering, I saw the place was deserted, no customers, no workers, nothing. However, there was an odd tune playing on someone's radio that I couldn't place. An old-sounding, upbeat piano piece was playing somewhere around the corner inside, and I heard shuffling once I walked closer to the source. This place made me feel scared. Not the, "whoa, this is creepy," scared, but the, "all hairs are on end, something is seriously wrong here but I can't figure it out," scared. As I turned the corner, I saw a young man standing next to a large radio and dancing. His dancing, though, was extremely off-putting and seriously didn't match the tune at all. Though the radio was cranking out what sounding like ragtime, this guy was running his hands up and down his body and pretty much feeling himself, with his eyes closed in what looked like bliss. He was going far slower than the music and definitely wasn't on tempo. For some reason, I couldn't speak. I couldn't even move. I was in a trance as every part of me screamed to turn and leave. Finally, I said, "Excuse me, I just need some gas." The guy kept dancing. I said it a little louder, and he finally slowed down a bit and opened his eyes, and focused on me. But it was like he was looking at a finely cooked steak. He was looking almost through me, and silently walked to the register, not saying anything. I said, just $20 please." He, again, didn't say anything and just stood behind the ancient register, so I just figured maybe he didn't speak the language or was embarrassed I caught him dancing, so I laid the money on the counter and went outside hoping he'd turn on the pump. I filled up, told my wife about the weird-ass scene in there, and turned off the pump to kill the horrible grinding noise from the interior pump fighting against gravity to get the gas up. Weird thing is, when we were leaving, I looked back in the window and the guy was still standing there behind the counter. This may sound fine, but my money was still on the counter in front of him. It was like he was a robot who just turned off once I left. This is where it gets super weird. A couple months later, I was driving back to San Antonio to visit family, and we figured we'd stop at that old gas station to see it in the daytime since it had become somewhat of a running joke between us. We pulled into this tiny town, and the thing was gone. The lot it sat on at the end of the road wasn't even there. It was just grass. No rubble, no old pump, no lighting, nothing. It was like somebody picked it up and moved it. It looked like nothing had been there for years. Still get freaked out thinking about it. Was driving through Illinois to get to Chicago about a decade ago with a group of friends, and we stopped at a Taco Bell. The first thing we noticed was that the workers were acting very odd. Everything they said was monotone and rehearsed. After sitting in this fairly busy restaurant for a bit, we kind of all just looked at each other at the same time as we realized that none of the conversations happening around us made any sense. The people were speaking, and it was English, but the sentences weren't logical. They were just saying words at each other. We didn't say much about it until we got outside, at which point we all freaked out and confirmed each other's experiences at once, and got the f out of there. We jokingly refer to that place as the NPC training center, since the people didn't seem to be real, or they were learning how to be human or something. Still freaks me out. Edit. Yes. I believe the orders were all correct, which I guess just ups the creepy factor. Edit 2. We were young and actually pretty straight edge at the time. None of us were high or anything. Edit 3. The best I can remember about the weird conversations was that they were stringing several prepositions in a row with no real sentence structure, forced laughter and nodding, stuff like that. Like they were mimicking how humans talk. Think of those, what English sounds like to a non-speaker, videos on YouTube, but everybody was doing it all around us. Edit 4. You, Tommy John Paul Jones has helped me determine that Pontiac, Ill is possibly the town. Has a TB write-off of 55. Edit 5. I wasn't clear yesterday, but the weird conversations were happening between customer, not just the workers, so it wasn't the crew trying to mess with us. If it was just the workers, I would totally buy that theory. I used to work retail and you'd do anything to make the day go faster, haha. There's this old abandoned hotel a couple hours away from me. It's not like a modern hotel, but like an old Victorian house that was turned into a B&B. It's totally boarded up, big fence around it with barbed wire. Apparently it's pretty damn haunted. In high school me and some friends went to go check it out. It's in the middle of this a circular road, not a roundabout, but you can go around several times before feeding back onto the main road. It takes about 90 seconds to go around this circle. Anyway, the first time we drive through, all the shades on the windows are drawn. We drive around again, only half of the shades are drawn. The next time we drive by, all the shades are open. We drove around one last time and all the shades were drawn again. We freaked out and drove the hell out of there. By my hometown there was a hiking trail that people went to very infrequently. It was along the side of the Niagara Escarpment, so it had some climbable cliffs, and some very shallow caves that you could crawl around on. I went with some friends when I was 19/20 and we were crawling around and found a cave that went pretty deep. We had never been in there before, had never even seen it before. So we pushed forward and decided to check it out, even though we had no flashlights, and this was when cell phones didn't really have a flashlight function. We stepped into the cave and it was easily 20-30 degrees cooler than outside. Upon looking around with which light we had, we noticed it was really clean inside the cave, as in it didn't have beer cans littered everywhere like all the other small caves did. While in there we got a really eerie feeling after being in there shortly. Hearing weird and strange things. Feeling like we were being touched, poked and pulled, and not having any way to figure out who was doing it because it was too dark. We were just using lighters to see what was around us. We were convinced one of us was messing with the others. Although anytime we sparked up a lighter, we were all decently far apart. We decided to hightail it out of there after only a few minutes, convinced to come back with flashlights. We came out to see that it was now dusk outside. When we entered it was midday. Somehow we had lost roughly 3 hours inside of this cave. We went back with flashlights the next week. But have never been able to find this cave again. Edit. Got 8 PMS asking where this is. It is in Wisconsin, Oakfield Ledge, if you want to check it out. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching all the way until the end, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment any surprising occurrences. If you want to continue to watch my content, click the video on screen now. Until next time.